Welcome, welcome. In one of my last videos, I went sketching by a lake and there were ducks and there was a little dog that came for a cuddle, and that was in the grounds of Cusworth Hall. And I promised that when the hall was opened, I would come back and I would make a video showing you the inside of it. So that's what I'm going to be doing in today's video. As you can see, it's quite a grand building. It's owned by the council and it is a museum of social history. So some of it is about the history of Doncaster in general, and some of it is about past residents of this hall. So note this bit here and how it's laid out, because in a minute you're going to see a little scale model of it that looks just the same, obviously. It was really cold, so the fire was very welcome. There was some creepy music playing, which was part of a video that was playing in that room ahead. And that there is the scale model, which we're going to look at in just a sec. There we go. And next we're going to see a list of chairmen and presidents of the DWC, whatever that is or was. In the cabinets we have some relics of the past. I think we can count the floorboards among them, but what I really liked about this room is up on the ceiling, and you'll see it in a minute. It is a fabulous painting. There we go. Can you imagine being up on scaffolding for the amount of time that it would take to paint that? And after this next cabinet, we're going to have a look in the chapel, which has more paintings on the ceiling. Another thing that I found interesting was that people with this much money that would have a big house like this would have their own church. So they wouldn't have to go to church with the great unwashed. They could just go to church in their own house. How strange is that? And you can see a little crib in there so that babies can attend the church. And there's also on the right there something that in its day was like a taxi. Next we're going to look in that room that the creepy music was emanating from. There's not really much to see in this one. Now look at this first painting. Look at the head compared to the rest of the body. This here is the book room, and it also has a little display here about code breaking and code making, I suppose. It's not a subject that I can claim to know very much about, but I understand that it was very important during the war for keeping messages secret, and also for trying to find out the secrets from the other side. I didn't really spend enough time with this, to be honest, to be able to figure out what it was all about. Now, if it looks like I'm filming on a potato, that's because it's very, very dark in some rooms in this museum. And they do that, I think, because they're trying to protect the exhibits. This part here is about industry. So we've got steam trains, we've got coal mines, we've got some stuff about unions and strikes. This piece is called Giants Refreshed, and the subtitle is Pacifics in the Doncaster Locomotive Works. So we've got a model here of a GNR Stirling single locomotive from around 1890. I'm pretty sure that my husband would have very much liked to have taken this home with him. Various bells and whistles, literally. And another model of a steam engine, this time pulling a wagon of coal. Cufflinks, a pocket watch, and other bits and pieces that the drivers and conductors would have used. This part is about the coal miners and about the strikes and the unions. I didn't scab. And that was something that could tear whole families apart for decades, if not their whole lives. If you scabbed, that meant that you crossed the picket line, and you went to work even though there was a strike. But if you didn't go to work, you didn't get paid, and you couldn't feed your kids. A very tough decision to face. Some old swimsuits here, and next I found a machine that I couldn't resist having a little bit of a play with. So this is an old clocking on machine. It has this little lever. I got too close there. So you can change it to say they're in, they're out, and out. Oops. Okay, don't know what that does. I think that you would put in a little piece of paper and then you would pull down that lever and it would make a mark or a hole or something in the paper to show what time you clocked in. Some health paraphernalia here. Of course, being ill back then would have been much more risky than it is today. This was another dark room, so I didn't film very much. But over here, there is a wheel that shows you some crimes and punishments throughout history. So if you're a witch in Scotland at that time, you would be burned. In Anglo-Saxon times, you'd have your hand cut off for stealing from a church. If you told lies, you'd have your tongue cut out, and if you nagged in medieval times, you'd get the ducking stool, which wasn't supposed to be a fatal thing, but sometimes it was. Note that that is a separate punishment than the one where they would throw suspected witches into a pond and see whether she would sink or float. And if she floated, then she would be burned, and if she sank and died, which she would in most cases, then that meant she was innocent, and that was alright then, because at least her soul would be safe. Here's some creepy little kids, and some creepy old dresses. Grandfather clock, and some old school desks. This one is Victorian. Again, sorry about the potato cam thing, it's just so dark in here. So that's what is inside there. I think that is, they used to beat people with that. And then this is a 1930s school desk. Don't know what they are. I think that was a birth certificate in there. But I don't know what the other things are. I'm always struck when I'm looking at toys from yesteryear that there's no pink toys and blue toys like we have these days. It really is like, we have to separate children by gender very strictly in a way that we just didn't in the past. Love a dollhouse. My grandma used to make them. But I play with a version that doesn't work as well as this one. It's called The Sims 4. And here we have some creepy dolls. I just always feel like their eyes are looking at me. Can't quite work out which is creepier actually, the dolls or this. It's like something you'd see in a film about a haunted house. Like, one of these things in the attic. And then there's a ghost. And here we have the old-time equivalent of console and mobile phone games. You actually see some things that look like this in the shops now, but of course they're new, but they're made to look vintage. I don't think they're actually popular with kids though. I think adults for whom those things are nostalgic will buy them for kids, and then the kids will just put them in a drawer. You notice how every room has a fireplace in it, and that's because of course they didn't have central heating or any other way to keep the rooms warm except for just having chimneys everywhere. Look how small those shoes were. I don't have much info about this stuff here, but it looks like the belongings of the ladies of the house and perhaps some of their handicrafts. And here you can see some of the people that would have lived and worked in the building. There are some children coming up that look like they're working at a very young age. There was an information board nearby which said, to unscrupulous factory owners, children were ideal workers, being cheap, nimble and powerless. Before 1833, there were no restrictions on child labour. Children as young as 4 went down coal mines or up chimneys. Others worked with their families at home, made to work as soon as they could use their fingers and until they fell asleep. There was a census taken in 1851, so this is after there were some restrictions. And even then it says there were children working from as young as 7. I couldn't even make a cup of tea when I was 7. My mum used to ask me to sometimes, and I would scold myself. Some vintage adverts and products on this next part. Gosh, they had big fountain pens back then. Here's a bit from one of the info boards. At Hodgson and Hepworth in the 19th century, they would be expected to work for 70 hours a week with only Sunday off. The shop was open for at least 12 hours each day, 14 on Saturdays. All this for around £40 a year. The label says this is a model of the beam engine at Anderton's Mill, and that the mill was built at Strawberry Island in 1911 and employed 40 people, mainly women, to spin wool. Just imagine that being taller than you. Some slightly more modern machinery here, and some of you may be aghast at the thought that these things are in a museum. Next we're going to see the hooter from the Radiance Toffee Factory. This hooter sounded at the beginning and the end of the day to tell workers it was time to start work or to go home. Here we have some more creepy dresses and even creepier floorboards. So that's Cusworth Hall in Doncaster, England. And if you're thinking of paying it a visit, there is a reasonable charge to park, and then after that it's free to get into the house and the gardens. Thanks for watching, please like and subscribe, and I hope to see you in the next video.